South Africa's market may have been closed yesterday due to a public holiday, but globally markets continue to bustle along. Asian stocks mostly rose on Tuesday despite investors remaining on edge after the latest tit-for-tat tariffs in the China-US trade war, while they are now looking ahead to the Federal Reserve's next policy meeting. Now, while the policies levied have been expected, there are concerns about how long the dispute will last after China cancelled planned talks and said negotiations cannot be carried out under the threat of tariffs. This has resulted in a mixed picture for markets in the Far East. Tokyo's Nikkei raised 0.3% to 23,940. Shanghai's composite index dipped 0.6% to 2,781, while Hong Kong was also closed for holiday. On Wall Street, the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed lower on Monday after a round of US-China trade tariffs kicked in, dampening last week's hopes for resolution. Investors also waited for an interest rate hike ahead of a US Federal Reserve meeting. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell over 0.2% to 26,562. The S&P 500 lost 0.3% to 2,919, while the Nasdaq Composite Index managed to tick up almost 1/10 to 7,993 points. For more on the markets, let's go over to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Arabile Gumede is there. Good afternoon, Arabile. What's taking place in the markets today?
Yeah, good afternoon, Nzinga. Well, it seems the market is playing a little bit of catch-up considering that public holiday from yesterday. Then it does seem as well that we're going to end in negative territory, having seen the likes of the Hang Seng before, and Asian markets really fare a little bit lower. Yes, the Hang Seng is closed this morning, but it is quite interesting to note the previous trade as well. The Rand doing slightly better, 14 Rand 37 odd against the US dollar, and the oil price will be of keen interest as well, now above that $80 a barrel mark. Let's unpack the rest of the European and local markets. Well, as you join me now, Bright Khumalo, who's a portfolio manager at Vestact Asset Management, is joining me now to unpack the market movement. Bright, thank you so much for the time. But taking a look at the market movement, a little bit down, 0.75%. Unexpected, expected for today?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but the biggest driver there, like you're saying, it's the Rand, basically. We've seen it going, being as strong as 14 Rand 20 to the US dollar, meaning the likes of, the financials locally are down a lot. We're seeing right now Nedbank down about 3.6%, Remgro, First Rand, and anything that's basically SA Inc. or linked to the financial sector also down a lot. So that's contributing on top of the fact that Nasdaq is down also.
Yeah, and I mean, that's always a big say, right? So 3.25% down there. Correct. As well. A big hit when it comes to the market on that front. That 14.36 Rand a dollar mark, that's better. And that's obviously in comparison to the 15 odd we had last week. Correct.
So, and the thing is, it's what does the stimulus package means for South Africans? Yeah. So we sit here, we wait, and to see how it's executed, and actually whether it's is it just another Ramaphoria, or is it a solid thing that's going to excite the economy the way we want to see it? Seeing it trickle down to the man on the street, actually being able to afford to buy those goods and items, and to get the confidence for the rest of the LSMs to actually spend and feel like they can spend their money and not just keep them and do nothing.
What are your thoughts on that stimulus package? I mean, it wasn't very clear with regards to exact details. So chronologically, it was said that now it's going to start the moment we leave the room. That's the word that was given out on Friday. No exact timelines for what exactly needs to be achieved by when. All that I got was that by next year's State of the Nation address, we will give an update.
Look, we'll wait for the update because we still don't know the what of the stimulus package, which is, leads to a how as well, to say how is it going to be executed. So we wait, like I said, we just have to watch this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is the fourth in about 10 years or so, and it really hasn't seemingly given too much impetus to people who are taking a real deep dive into it. But let's track the markets back again now, and one of the most interesting ones, it's dropped down ever so slightly now, back below 3% in terms of gains for today, but MTN is quite a critical one. There are thoughts there of perhaps a merger with Telkom.
Correct. So someone sent that to me on Twitter yesterday. I thought it was a joke. So I guess, it sort of makes sense for Telkom, but, I think MTN would have, technically speaking, passed through this just fine by themselves. They don't need to merge.
They're not that desperate yet, surely.
Exactly. It's not that bad yet that you need to merge with someone to, to stop the bleeding. I think you can bleed on this one and it'll clot on its own. And the important thing here is that what does it mean, obviously, for the South African? There will be synergies in the two companies. I hate using that word. But basically, operationally, it makes sense because the big back end, the fiber back end that Telkom has, and, MTN being a leader in mobile, it makes sense. So Telkom doesn't have to spend so much to compete on the mobile side because the infrastructure has been spent already by MTN, and vice versa in terms of the fiber side of things. So it kind of makes sense. And I've been reading reports that maybe management is looking into culling some of their geographies. I don't think it'll be that cutthroat and very quick about it. Would
it not reduce risk, though? I mean, considering the fact, and maybe it's just particularly Nigeria, but they do operate in very difficult markets.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. You remember in Uganda, they have to renew their license, and the regulators did actually say it'll be of their best interest if MTN listed on the Ugandan Stock Exchange. I'm not complaining about that. It makes sense because it increases, the compensation and the performance of MTN Uganda as a unit, because they would want their unit to do well, so they'll be compensated well. And if that's listed on the stock exchange, it makes sense because you can see the price, which is overall in the long term, it's good for the overall group.
Overall, the impact then on the market, we could even touch on that oil price now touching nearly $82 a barrel there. Donald Trump, President of the United States, says to OPEC, reduce prices. OPEC says, no can do.
Yeah, obviously he was, alluding at the fact that they need to open the taps now and ramp up production and carry on. And as a fact, they wanted to show that they're independent, I think, and this is what we're getting. They're not going to be opening the taps. Fortunately,
to say independent when they're a cartel, but yes.
well, yeah, it's I use that word loosely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Price of gold now also below $1,200 a fine ounce. Do you think there's any remnants there of that price going even higher, perhaps?
Well, I have no idea on gold, but it's very interesting to see the likes of Barrick Gold and Rand Gold merging, making a $10 billion revenue company. That'll see about $4.7 billion in EBITDA, earnings. It was unexpected. The current Rand Gold shareholders are going to keep a third of the business, and the Barrick Gold shareholders are going to keep 2/3, making a very, very efficient, gold producer, which has its, its roots here in Africa. So it's very interesting. Those two CEOs are very interesting as well as characters. The one is from John is from Goldman Sachs, and Mark Bristow is a South African who's known for cruising in his motorbike across Africa. Is very hardcore. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Right. Really appreciate it, but thank you so much. A mixed market reaction picture there, as you can see, around 0.7% as well. To the negative is the state of the market as well. The Rand trading a little bit better as well in comparison to those 15 levels that we saw not so long ago. But that's where the buck stops this afternoon. That's your market picture. Nzinga and Nompumelelo joining you right after this.